My fiancé told me, at our engagement party, that he would have married his first love if she hadn't gotten sick. I called my tycoon father. This match is not compliant. Get me a replacement. Tonight is my engagement party. I'm standing calmly in the corner of the runway, wearing a meticulously custom-made white gown, observing the entire scene. To me, this engagement is merely a formality to fulfill my father's wish. He's not in the best health and, out of love for me, he wants me to settle down early and inherit the family business. So, he compiled a list of young business magnates, asking me to pick a partner with a clean background who could help me share the workload. I wasn't interested at all. I just casually picked a file from a stack of elite resumes. Selecting Aidan Grayson was that arbitrary. However, the leading man tonight clearly takes himself far more seriously than I do. Lyra, come backstage for a moment. I need to talk to you. Aidan's voice carried an urgent, almost sanctimonious pretense. I followed him to the lounge. The air, besides the sweetness of champagne, was mixed with a faint scent of disinfectant. I saw a caretaker, dressed in haute couture, carefully pushing a wheelchair. A woman was sitting in the wheelchair, her complexion was pale and her beauty fragile. She was exactly who the file mentioned, his first love, Flora Dell. Aidan didn't wait for me to speak and immediately seized the moral high ground. His tone held a barely concealed pity and apology, but the apology was clearly not for me. Lyra, I'm truly sorry, but I had to bring Flora here. He adjusted his cuff, his eyes deliberately cold. I know this marriage of convenience is beneficial to both our families. But you must understand, my marrying you is a family arrangement, a last resort. He turned to Flora, his movements as gentle as if handling a precious artifact. If Flora hadn't had that accident a few years ago, requiring long-term rehabilitation and keeping her confined to a wheelchair all these years, we would have been married already. He actually had the audacity to say such intimate and humiliating words so righteously, and right in front of me. I found it laughable. My family's wealth and influence dwarf his many times over. Choosing him was injecting massive capital and connections into his company. Yet, he insisted on acting out this forced drama of devoted love. Aidan. I finally spoke, my voice devoid of any ripple, but the ice in my eyes was enough to freeze everything. You're mistaken. This alliance was never about you being forced, it was about me being casual. Do you honestly think I'm settling for you? His face stiffened, clearly not expecting me to be so direct. But quickly, his arrogance returned, convincing himself it was merely a woman's emotional outburst, the final struggle of a woman being abandoned. You accepted my father's terms, didn't you? He sneered. I had no interest in arguing with him, merely glancing indifferently at Flora in the wheelchair. The woman was indeed very beautiful. Her paleness and frailty lent her a classical beauty, making it no wonder Aidan had been fixated on her for so many years. Just as we were at a standstill, Flora seemed to try and reach for the orange juice on the coffee table, but lacking arm strength, her hand trembled, and the juice in the stemmed glass instantly spilled, wetting her beige skirt. She let out a weak gasp, her face growing paler, her eyes filled with helplessness and shame. Aidan's eyes instantly widened in panic. He abruptly spun around, completely disregarding me, the person he was just arguing with. His voice was full of heartache. Sweetheart, are you okay? Hurry, be careful not to catch a cold. He didn't even wait for the caretaker to step forward. He strode over decisively and, without a moment's hesitation, took off his brand-new, specially customized groom's jacket. In full view of everyone, he gently draped the expensive cashmere jacket over Flora's shoulders and legs, perfectly covering the stain on her dress, and concealing her body which was subtly trembling from weakness. The scene unfolded too quickly, everyone saw it. The guests' whispers instantly ceased, the air seemed to solidify for a second, followed by even louder, more intense murmurs, laced with scrutiny and mockery. They exchanged glances, their eyes darting back and forth between me, Aidan, and Flora. I stood rooted to the spot, watching Aidan gently lean over. His profile was reflected in the tearful eyes of Flora. Their intimate tableau was like a frozen portrait of star-crossed lovers. They were utterly absorbed in their own world, as if the thousands of guests and the so-called fiancé were just background noise. I could feel the looks of scrutiny, pity, and schadenfreude landing on me. Anger? None. Humiliation? Not really. I just felt a waste of time. My engagement party had been turned into his first love confession and moral showcase. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's number directly. Hello, Dad. My voice was as calm as if I were discussing a standard business report, completely lacking the hysteria expected of a fiancé publicly humiliated. "You're at the engagement party, why step out to call?" My father's voice carried that unique parental affection. I looked at the center of the crowd, at the groom's jacket draped over someone else, and calmly announced my decision. "Dad, I need you to arrange for a replacement for this marriage alliance. Aidan is unsuitable. He seems to have no self-awareness about being a kept man." I hung up the phone, paying no mind to the commotion around Aidan and Flora, not even sparing them a second glance. My time is precious, not a second is worth wasting on this farce. I walked directly toward the exit of the ballroom. The sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor was like a final rest note for this hasty engagement. My expensive white gown shimmered with a cold brilliance under the lights, and I left without looking back, giving no one a chance to try and stop me or enjoy the spectacle. Later that night, just as I finished taking off my makeup, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Flora's social media account. The photo was taken in a luxurious private hospital room. Flora lay in bed, smiling weakly, while Aidan, the man who was supposed to be my fiancé at the engagement party, was asleep sideways on the sofa beside her bed, looking exhausted yet cautiously nestled. The thing he was wearing was the groom's jacket he had taken off for Flora. It was now serving as his own thin blanket. The photo was captioned with a brief and vague line, "Thank you. Tonight meant a lot to me." I didn't feel a flicker of anger, only a sickening sense of grief. They were desperate to prove their true love to the world, and I was just a prop they used to cement their public image. I was about to toss the phone aside when Aidan's message popped up immediately after. "Lyra, you left?" "I'm sorry." I scoffed, looking at the screen. He wasn't apologizing, he was testing the waters. "I suddenly had an important work matter that needed urgent attention and couldn't come find you," he explained, his wording clumsy, carrying the guilt-ridden feel of a thief caught in the act. Work? Was his work playing the role of the deeply devoted good man in a hospital room? I couldn't be bothered to reply. A man who could and even manage to keep up appearances wasn't worth a minute of my attention. The next day, as expected, the upper-class social circles were buzzing. My fiancé publicly cared for his first love at our engagement, and I instantly announced the cancellation of the alliance and stormed off. This kind of gossip was enough to excite the long-stagnant elite community for quite a while. I knew that in private, they would mock me, saying I was publicly embarrassed. Or that I was blind to have chosen a scumbag. But so what? My family is a titan standing at the apex of the pyramid. Our strength and foundation mean that any frivolous mockery must stop at private, small circles. No one would dare gossip in front of me, and no one would dare publicly discuss my private affairs. They revere my family and fear my methods. I couldn't care less about the ending for Aidan and Flora. They have been completely removed from my world, like a failed business proposal sent directly to the shredder. I calmly and firmly recontacted my assistant, "Give me the previous list of potential alliance candidates again. Cross Aidan Grayson's name out directly. This time, I need to be more deliberate with the investigation." I leaned back in my large office chair, my fingertip lightly tapping the desk, a glint of shrewdness and decisiveness in my eyes. I need a man who is clear-headed, fully understands what he stands to gain by marrying me, and has the self-awareness not to ruin my mood over some meaningless first love drama. The casual selection last time wasted my time. This time, I will personally select a partner who can share my workload and knows the score. Over the next few days, my attention was completely focused on the new batch of alliance candidate files my father sent over. Compared to the glittering resumes of business magnates, I was more concerned with their personalities, weaknesses, and most importantly, their level of understanding of a marriage of convenience. My assistant's efficiency was, as always, top-notch. As she handed me the in-depth background reports on the key candidates, she also placed a supplementary file regarding Aidan and Flora on top. "Miss Lyra, these are the latest updates and a background review on your former fiancé and his girlfriend. You might want to understand why they never married 2 years ago." The assistant's tone was calm, as if reporting on an irrelevant old project. I took the file and casually opened it. The official narrative was Aidan and Flora were college sweethearts. Flora was the star of the dance academy, shining brightly. Aidan started his own tech company from scratch after graduation. Judging by the intensity of the love they publicly displayed, they should have married soon after graduation. But for some unknown reason, they never settled down. Until 2 years ago, when Flora accidentally fell off the stage during an important performance, suffering severe spinal injuries, requiring long and costly rehabilitation. Aidan's image as the devoted lover was built on his unwavering commitment to the injured party over the past 2 years. I sneered and flipped to the back of the file. That was the real point of interest. The assistant handed me a stack of photos. The Flora in the pictures was not the fragile, wheelchair-bound patient from the engagement party. The photos were taken a year ago. Although Flora was mobility impaired, she was impeccably dressed and made up, entering and exiting the city's most exclusive private restaurants and secret high society parties with various men. There were 50-something real estate tycoons, young executive directors of entertainment companies, and even a down-on-his-luck European minor noble. The smile on her face was not one of dependence on her first love, but one of calculating money and power. None of the photos included Aidan. The truth was so clear, yet so full of irony. I tossed the photos back onto the desk, a look of mockery curving my lips. It turned out Flora was the unscrupulous pragmatist. She was simultaneously enjoying Aidan's loyal first love persona, treating him as a reliable backup, while trying to use her beauty and social circle to latch onto a family with more power and wealth than Aidan. It was only bad luck that she was injured, forcing all her fishing plans to stop. Meanwhile, Aidan's company began to show promise in the venture capital world, starting to have the value to afford her rehabilitation costs. An injured, socially incapacitated Flora finally began to cling to her promising first boyfriend. Aidan may be devoted, but sadly, his devotion was never his own leverage, it was Flora's tool to hedge risks, I summarized softly to my assistant. However, the curtain is now closing on this farce. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes cold, as if watching an absurd play about to end. Aidan's company needed my family's alliance to weather its current bottleneck. That was the fundamental reason he appeared on the alliance list as a business magnate. Once the cancellation of the alliance is announced, the pressure of the capital chain will immediately drown him like a tide. Flora's rehabilitation costs are astronomical. I smiled, with a touch of the satisfaction that comes from seeing through human nature. When Aidan is notified that the alliance is off, his company will struggle to survive the crisis. And without his financial support for her medical care, will his pure, fragile first love remain loyal and willing to be his devoted backdrop in a hospital room? I look forward to finding out. Now, leave these few key files. I pointed to several new alliance candidate dossiers on the table. This time, I want a more aware and more interesting alliance partner. 3 days later, my office was dominated by neat filing folders. These were the results of the assistant's deep dive investigations into all the alliance candidates. I flipped through the resumes, young, handsome, with minor business achievements, and clean family backgrounds. Most candidates were impeccable, they clearly understood the benefits of the alliance and demonstrated sincerity about the partnership. If I were simply looking for a reliable person to share the workload, any random pick would avoid Aidan's kind of amateur mistake. However, just as I was about to perform my random draw for one lucky husband act again, a file placed separately in the far corner captured my complete attention. It was an unusually concise dossier. Name: Felix Laszlo. Background: business school graduate, started a boutique investment bank from scratch, business is stable with extremely high returns. Reason for selection: exceptional business talent, sharp investment acumen, the most long-term potential among all the new magnates on the list. Family background: blank. Blank? I frowned. Given my family's capacity for intelligence networks, thoroughly vetting a person's background, especially a businessman already on the alliance list, should be no challenge. This file was detailed, knowing what Felix's favorite dish was at his university cafeteria, yet the section on his family background was empty. Blank usually implies some kind of power beyond the conventional, or deliberate concealment and protection. I picked up the file, my fingers tracing the surname Laszlo. Laszlo. The surname flickered weakly in the depths of my memory. I had once overheard my best friend casually mention it. It was an extremely ancient, discreet, and virtually unknown old money family. They don't appear on wealth lists and rarely participate in public social events, but their influence permeates finance, arts, and energy sectors, possessing unfathomable depth. Could it be his family? My family's need for an alliance was to settle down and inherit the family business, so my father selected young business magnates, not established old houses. If Felix truly hails from the Laszlo family, he absolutely wouldn't need an alliance to solidify his status. I called the internal line, notify father. I want to meet Felix Laszlo. This time, I decided not to be arbitrary. The air of mystery on this resume, far more than the transparent elite dossiers, quickened my pulse and made him worth investigating and mastering. My curiosity was quickly satisfied. My father is always efficient and soon arranged a meeting with Felix. However, my inner skepticism didn't vanish before the appointment. If he truly belongs to the ancient Almost invisible old money family, the Laszlo family, why would he have the freedom to start his own company from scratch? For a super elite family like that, arrangements for the heir would be precise and rigorous. Starting a business independently is practically heretical. Furthermore, old money families usually have their own alliance arrangements aimed at consolidating power, not a work alliance like ours, which is seeking a business magnate to share the workload. If he doesn't obey his family and his career, how could he possibly agree to an alliance arrangement, let alone agree to meet me? I kept these questions to myself, resolving to find the answers during the meeting. The meeting place was a private bar I frequently visit. It's a discreet spot that only serves regulars. I appreciate its quiet, professional atmosphere. In the early evening, I received a message from Felix, simple and direct, "Come to the bar." I walked into the bar. The ambience was as dark and elegant as always, filled with the crisp scent of whiskey and lemon peel. I looked at the bar counter, and surprisingly, there was not a single customer. This was highly unusual. I felt a slight oddity but still walked gracefully to the center high chair at the bar. The next second, a man in a white shirt and black vest walked up to me. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the defined lines of his forearm. He smiled and picked up a clean white cloth to wipe a glass. "What can I get for you, madam?" His voice was deep and magnetic, his eyes holding the focused scrutiny typical of a mixologist. I was momentarily stunned. His face was unfamiliar, but his eyes were familiar. "I'm the bartender tonight, Felix," he introduced himself succinctly, placing the wiped glass down. My heart gave a sudden thump, the sheer surprise rendered me speechless for a moment. I studied him closely. He wasn't wearing the tailored suit typical of a business elite, and his hair was more casually tousled than in the picture. But his deep-set features and those all-knowing eyes were unmistakably the man from the file photo, Felix Laszlo. He was also the bartender I most admired at this bar, the one who could always mix my favorite drink during my regular visits. I had just never connected this relaxed, professional bartender, always busy behind the bar in his uniform, with those slick, potential alliance candidates. "You are Felix." I finally recovered my voice, tinged with assessing interest. He smiled, a look of understanding that recognized my surprise and a touch of well-measured self-deprecation. "Yes, I am Felix." "I can guess all your questions," he said, leaning his hands on the bar, his tone candid. "I do run an investment bank, that is all true. As for bartending, it's just a hobby. This is a friend's bar. I come once or twice a week when I'm in the mood, just to relax." This blind date, which was supposed to be filled with calculation and caution, had unfolded in such an unexpected way. I looked at him and suddenly felt that this alliance might be far more interesting than I had anticipated. Over the next few hours, Felix and I hit it off at the bar. He mixed me a moonlit forest, gin-based and garnished with fresh rosemary, a flavor that was crisp, complex, and strikingly similar to my alcohol preferences. "You've clearly done your research on my taste," I said, holding the glass, my eyes showing appreciation. "You are a regular here, and your ordering tendencies are quite evident," he replied easily, but there was a seriousness in his eyes, as if to say he had been observing me, while maintaining professional distance. I found that he was not only an exquisite mixologist but also held uniquely insightful views on business, art, and travel. His thinking was clear and laced with humor. He had none of the arrogance or sleaze of a typical business elite. Instead, he carried the unassuming composure of an artist. This blind date, initially intended for mutual valuation, ended up being a purely pleasant conversation. It was late when I put down my glass, and he immediately understood that the evening should conclude. "I can't drink tonight, so I'd be honored to drive you home," he said, taking off his vest and putting on a dark gray jacket. I nodded, my favorable impression of him deepening. This kind of gentlemanly demeanor, never crossing boundaries while always remaining polite and thoughtful, was exactly what I admired most. The car stopped smoothly in front of my house. It was a private villa, secluded yet in the heart of the city, with tall wrought iron gates and lush greenery. Just as Felix unbuckled his seatbelt to open my door, my gaze went past the front window and fixed on a somewhat disheveled figure by the iron gate. It was Aidan. His once neat suit was now wrinkled, his hair messy. He stood alone in the night, looking like an abandoned tramp. He seemed to have been waiting for a long time. The moment he saw my car, he rushed toward it as if grabbing a lifeline. I calmly opened the car door and stepped out of the passenger seat. After parking, Felix slowly walked over and stood beside me, one step away, like a steady statue. "Lyra! You can't do this. You can't call off our engagement." Aidan rushed up to me, his tone urgent and panicked. He tried to grab my hand, but I skillfully avoided him. Did something happen to your company? I looked at him calmly, my voice asking about the weather, without any emotional fluctuation. His face turned pale, knowing he couldn't hide it from me. Yes. Because you canceled the engagement. That crucial investment that was supposed to come in has been withdrawn. My company is now facing the risk of a broken capital chain. Please, Lyra, help me. Let's restart the alliance. If you're willing, I can break up with Flora immediately. I found it amusing. Even now, this man was still trying to use me. Did you ask Flora? Would she agree? I asked coldly. Aidan hesitated, his eyes flickering, but he was quickly overwhelmed by the desire for survival. She will. Flora, she doesn't matter to me. She just needs care. You are my future, Lyra. I promise, this will never happen again. The lie was so clumsy, I saw right through him. His devotion at this moment was nothing but a mix of fear and greed. You should go, Aidan. I turned, ready to walk toward the gate, unwilling to waste another second. Lyra! He completely panicked, reaching out and forcefully grabbing my arm. The moment he touched me, Felix, who had been standing silently next to me, moved. His motion was swift, yet carried an undeniable elegance. He firmly gripped Aidan's wrist and, with a cold, steady strength, peeled his hand away from my arm. Please let go of her, Felix's voice was low, but contained an irresistible authority. Aidan only then noticed Felix's presence. He saw me stepping out of the passenger seat of a luxury car and a handsome, commanding man standing beside me. Anger and jealousy instantly consumed him. Who are you? Aidan yelled, then glared at me, his eyes full of malice. Lyra, you're such a fickle woman. I gave up everything for you, and you found a replacement so quickly? You're mistaken, Aidan. I didn't find a replacement. I was merely selecting a more qualified alliance partner than you, I said flatly, my tone full of contempt. Aidan completely lost control, pointing at Felix and screaming, Do you think you'll be happy marrying him? I'm telling you, I'm the most promising business magnate. You'll regret not marrying me. And anyway, I still have Flora. She loves me. She will always love me. I looked at his hysterical state and only felt disgust. Felix stood in front of me, like an insurmountable barrier, shielding me from all the filth. You have missed all your leverage. I didn't look at him again, and said to Felix, Let's go. Less than a week after the farce ended, Aidan's company officially declared bankruptcy. The risk of a broken capital chain became a reality, and suppliers and creditors swarmed his once luxurious headquarters, besieging it completely. What gave me a slight sense of satisfaction was the manner of his escape. Aidan, like a rat caught in the act, chose to sneak onto a flight late at night to flee the country, leaving his deeply loved first love, Flora, behind in the city without hesitation. The debt collectors soon tracked down Flora, who was undergoing rehabilitation. They assumed this woman, whom the fiancé had publicly cherished at the engagement party, must know Aidan's whereabouts. However, Flora, tearfully facing the menacing debt collectors, insisted she knew nothing about Aidan's business affairs. She even distanced herself, claiming they broke up ages ago, were not close, and were merely friends from years past. Stripped of Aidan's financial support, Flora's medical and rehabilitation expenses instantly became astronomical. The hospital ruthlessly discharged her. The former beauty in a wheelchair, who had fallen off the stage and been treated as a jewel by her fiancé, was finally experiencing the taste of abandonment in the face of harsh reality. I felt no sympathy upon hearing this news. One was greedy and vain, the other selfish. Their ending was simply a matter of reaping what they sowed. As for me, I poured all my energy into spending time with Felix. Since our impromptu bar date and the damsel in distress rescue at my gate, we had been dating frequently. He was no longer just my bartender but my most compatible confidant. We discussed trends in the financial market, enjoyed niche classical music, and planned short getaways to escape the city. I found that he not only had unique business insights but also shared my sophisticated taste in literature and travel. I am a woman who grew up in an elite family, someone who had seen too much human hypocrisy and had no hope for marriage or love. Yet, around Felix, my heart, which had long been accustomed to being frozen, gradually started to develop a soft spot. However, one thing prevented me from fully letting down my guard: his family. He never brought it up, and I was waiting for the right moment. This excessive mystique constantly reminded me he was not just the self-made young magnate, the vast, discreet Laszlo family must be standing behind him. On Valentine's Day, he invited me to his secluded small villa for dinner. No bartending tonight, he smiled gently, his eyes filled with the anticipation of praise. I'm your private chef. His small villa, nestled by the mountains and water, was decorated simply and tastefully. Imbued with an artistic flair, completely lacking the ostentation of a typical nouveau riche magnate. Dinner was an exquisite French meal. He cooked the steak and prepared the red wine to perfection. We were halfway through dinner when the doorbell suddenly rang. Felix frowned almost imperceptibly, stood up, and went to open the door. A few seconds later, his slightly surprised voice came back. Dad? Mom? What are you doing here? My heart skipped a beat. They had arrived. I remained composed and elegant, waiting at the dining table. Soon, Felix walked in with a middle-aged couple, impeccably dressed and possessing an extraordinary demeanor. Their poise was not that of an aggressive arrogance, but a serene confidence emanating from within. Their chauffeur had just finished parking a custom Rolls-Royce Phantom. I was almost certain they were the Laszlos. Felix's parents were indeed surprised to see me, but their impeccable manners allowed them to quickly regain their composure, replacing it with a gracious and gentle smile. Dad, Mom, this is Lyra. Felix introduced me calmly and naturally, with a touch of proprietary declaration. Lyra, these are my father and mother. He introduced me to them first, then them to me. I stood up, maintaining the grace of a well-bred lady, and smiled as I greeted them. Lyra, Felix's mother, a well-maintained, elegant woman, looked at me with a hint of apology. We are so sorry to interrupt your Valentine's Day dinner. Felix always prefers to keep to himself. We were just passing through on our way to our vacation home and thought we'd stop by, but we didn't expect him to finally have a beautiful companion, his father interjected, his tone carrying the humorous familiarity of a superior. His gaze lingered on me for a few seconds, an appreciative scrutiny. Felix explained courteously, Lyra is my girlfriend. We are celebrating Valentine's Day together. He didn't mention the alliance, choosing instead to introduce me using the most direct, intimate relationship, which warmed my heart. Girlfriend? His mother's smile became more genuine, a flicker of relief in her eyes. That's wonderful news. Please continue. We will leave right away so as not to bother you. Neither senior made any attempt to linger or pry into my background, they maintained an extremely efficient and discreet politeness. Before leaving, his mother warmly shook my hand, her grip gentle but firm. Lyra, you must come visit our home next time. Don't listen to this boy, he wasn't always one to keep to himself when he was little. We must host a formal welcome dinner for you. I politely expressed my gratitude and watched them drive away in that low-key yet priceless Rolls-Royce. The silence returned to the villa only after the motorcade vanished into the night. I sat back down at the dining table, looked at Felix, and gestured for him to lay his cards on the table. He shrugged, offering a helpless yet candid smile, and refilled my wine glass. You guessed correctly, he said, without any attempt to hide the truth, his voice low and clear. I am indeed a Laszlo. The name, as you know, has always been overly discreet. He paused, a hint of ease in his eyes. However, I'm not the eldest son, I have an older brother. My parents are quite open-minded about many things. Or rather, the family's focus is entirely on my brother. So I do and have to bear the pressure of the family enterprise and am free to choose what I want to do, like starting a business from scratch. This explanation completely dispelled all my doubts. No wonder he could be self-made, it gave him sufficient freedom, and it also confirmed the Laszlo family's profound foundation. They were confident enough that even their second son striking out on his own wouldn't bring them shame. Why did you agree to meet me? I asked the most critical question. He put down his glass, leaned forward slightly. And his voice became earnest and magnetic. Lyra, I've been watching you for a while. He looked candidly into my eyes. The times I've bartended here, you always specified me to serve you. The cocktails I mix have no expensive gimmicks, only skill and flavor. What you appreciated and acknowledged was my professional technique, not the name or wealth behind me. I saw a woman who, despite being born into affluence, maintains her self-judgment and taste. You didn't flirt or flatter me, there was only genuine admiration. So, when my name appeared on your father's alliance list, I didn't reject it. I didn't come for a blind date, I was simply interested in you. This perfectly aligned with my own long-held suspicion. Neither of us was a passive chess piece, we simply actively chose each other on the same chessboard. After Felix revealed his family background, I completely shed all my reservations. I no longer saw him as a mere tool for an alliance but as a completely independent partner with a fascinating soul. We cherished the time we spent together. He not only had unique commercial insights, providing precise advice on my path to inheriting the family enterprise, but his taste in books and travel was also surprisingly consistent with mine. We often curled up in the library, each holding an antique book, occasionally looking up to share a silent smile, a mutual understanding that surpassed 1,000 words. I, a woman who had grown up in an elite family, seeing through the nuances of human relationships and holding no hope for love, now felt my heart gradually being melted by him. He became the sweet and unshakable soft spot in my life. A few days later, Felix's parents kept their promise. Felix brought me an invitation card bearing the Laszlo family crest. They were hosting a grand banquet at their residence. Even more delightful, they requested that Felix personally take me to get my gown custom made, a silent sign of acceptance and respect. A week later, I visited Felix's parents' suburban residence for the first time, the place where he grew up. The mansion was discreetly hidden in the depths of a dense forest, lacking ostentatious grandeur but possessing an elegance and solemnity refined by time. "Follow me. I'll show you where I spent my childhood," Felix said, taking my hand, his voice laced with a boyish pride. He first took me to the athletic facilities where he practiced fencing and equestrianism in his youth. The massive indoor arenas, equipped with top-tier equipment, showcased the family's investment in their descendants' elite education. Then, he led me to his bedroom. In the relatively modest room, the bookshelf was far more prominent than the wardrobe, unlike a typical top-tier magnate's son's room. Finally, he pushed open a door hidden at the end of a corridor. What greeted my eyes was a massive conservatory garden. Sunlight poured through the glass dome, illuminating layers of green vegetation and blooming white roses. The air was filled with the mixed scent of earth and flowers. In the center, there was a small wicker table and an old chair, with a few yellowed, hardcover books resting on the table. "This was my favorite place to read when I was a child," he whispered. "It was the only place where I could find peace whenever I felt pressured." We walked to a corner filled with bouquets of lily of the valley. He turned to face me, his eyes blazing with a love hotter than the sunlight. Just as I was admiring the sea of flowers, he suddenly dropped to one knee. I covered my mouth, my eyes instantly welling up with tears. He took a small velvet box from his pocket. When he opened it, a huge, pure, dazzling pink diamond ring was presented before me. "Lyra," he looked up, his voice slightly trembling, yet his eyes were unwavering. "I commissioned a friend to search for a long time to find this natural pink diamond from a mine. It's the purest, most unique color. The design and creation on top of it, I secretly learned and finished myself. I used to believe that freedom was more important than anything. It wasn't until I met you that I realized my freedom was meant for choosing you, and my future was meant to be spent with you. Please marry me. Let me be your home, your support, your eternity." Tears streaming down my face, I nodded repeatedly, excitedly reaching out my hand. "I will, Felix. Of course, I will." He stood up and carefully placed the unique pink diamond ring on my finger. It fit me perfectly. He gently hugged me, whispering in my ear, "Thank you, my fiancé." He took my hand, and we walked out of the conservatory garden together, heading toward the brightly lit ballroom. In the ballroom, guests were gathered, dressed in their finest attire. Felix's parents saw us from afar, their eyes immediately locking onto our clasped hands and the striking pink diamond on my finger. Felix smiled, gently nodding toward his parents. This was a signal only understood within their family. His parents' expressions instantly shifted to excitement, and they exchanged a look. Just as I was confused by their silent communication, Felix's father walked to the center of the ballroom and tapped a crystal glass. "Dear friends, please allow me a few minutes of your time." His resonant voice echoed in the hall. "My younger son, Felix Laszlo, has just successfully proposed to a beautiful lady." A low murmur rippled through the room, then quieted down. Felix's father looked at me, his eyes full of affection and pride. "Now, allow me to formally introduce the future mistress of the Laszlo family, my daughter-in-law, Lyra." I was slightly surprised, not expecting them to be so grand and direct. I looked at Felix. He smiled and gently squeezed my hand, his gaze offering encouragement and strength. "Shall we go over together? My fiancé." I took a deep breath, nodded, and walked with him toward the center of the ballroom. We started from a necessary alliance, I for family duty, he for freedom and interest. Yet, fate, in the most dramatic way, brought two souls who initially didn't believe in love tightly together. Amidst the genuine applause of all the guests, Felix and I smiled at each other. I discarded an arrogant, greedy alliance candidate, but gained the profound heritage of the Laszlo family. And a man who appreciated me, a prize more precious than wealth.